I'm the unfortunate Ray Dag in that I'm the idiot that happened to be on the roof at the Beatles at their last ever concert, which I didn't know it was their last at the time. I walked into the station on duty, etc., and the sergeant said to me, well, before you go anywhere on your beat, he said, go and shut that noise down, because he said it's not only the noise we've had complaints about, but there's people in the street, thousands, listening to the music, and that's blocking Regent Street, which was blocking Piccadilly, which was blocking Shaftesbury Avenue, which is blocking the whole of the West End. So traffic is absolutely at a standstill all over the West End because the lads are on the roof playing. When I got there, there were just thousands of people and even some policemen there. So I never know today why they let me in. I think it was because I looked so young and they thought, this is the bloke we're going to let in. I didn't know they were on the roof because I couldn't see them from the street. I thought they were in a studio with amplifiers out into the streets so that people could hear the noise, you know. It was only when I was down in the reception, Jimmy or whatever his name was told me they were on the roof. I said, they're on the roof. Hell, you know. So I opened the door. I said, look, I need to speak to somebody about this noise. And as I walked in, I saw one of these, to my right, one of these two-way mirrors. And there was something moving behind it. And my suspicions were confirmed when I got to the desk because there was a bunch of flowers there on the desk. And in the flowers was a microphone. So I knew we had to be on our best behaviour from then on in, because I suspected it was being filmed. I threatened to arrest them downstairs, I threatened to arrest them on the roof. The meaningful threat, if you like, was not much of a threat, but the meaningful threat was up on the roof, because that was what stopped it in the end. The late Malcolm Evans came down, who was the Beatles road manager. And I said, right, that's it. I said, I've been very patient. I said, I've been trying to accommodate you, but you show no sign of stopping. Tell the four of them they're under arrest. And he said, what are you arresting them for? I said, obstructing police in the execution of their duty and highway obstruction. There's 15,000 people down there blocking the West End.
You just made out that number.
I did, yeah. I didn't know how many was, you know. So he said, well, let me try this. So he went over and unplugged their amps from their instruments, which they weren't very pleased about. And Lennon and McCartney, I think it was, turned round to plug them back in again. And at that moment, Evans said something to them. I didn't hear what he said, but I suspect he said, you are under arrest if you don't stop. And they had a conversation with him, and he came back and said to me, can we do one more? I said, literally one more. That's it, finish.
And it was get back.
And it was get back, and Paul altered the words at the end to say the law's coming for you and all this sort of thing.
And were you serious about arresting them?
Well, 52 years later, reflecting on it all, I don't know whether I would have done or I wouldn't have done. I honestly can't tell you. The problem with it is that for the offences they were committing, there is no power of arrest on private property. It has to be on public property. So it would have meant arresting them on private property, taking them outside, and then I'd have got into a lot of trouble, a huge amount of trouble, if I turned up at the station with the Beatles in tow, wrongfully arrested, as it
They would have
been.
loved that.
They would have loved it, I suspect, but I think I'd have got chewed up and spat out.